There is a story about Epictetus that his students told long after he was gone. His master, a wealthy freedman in Rome named Epaphroditus, was twisting his leg, slowly, deliberately, the way a man twists something when he wants to demonstrate that he can. And Epictetus said, calmly, "You are going to break it." Epaphroditus kept twisting. "There, you have broken it." And then, with the same calm, "Did I not tell you so?" No rage, no plea, no collapse into the particular terror of a person whose body is being destroyed by someone who owns it. Just observation, clear, unfrightened, almost serene observation of what was happening from a place so interior, so completely his own, that no amount of physical force could reach it. That place, that unreachable interior, is the entire philosophy of Epictetus, and it is the most direct, most stripped down, most practically useful answer to the question of human suffering that any philosopher has ever produced. Some things are in our control, some things are not. Everything depends on knowing the difference. Here is the architecture of most human suffering. We want something we cannot guarantee. We fear something we cannot prevent. We are angry at something we cannot change. We are anxious about something that has not happened and may never happen, and even if it does happen, will be survived. And we spend the energy of our lives, the irreplaceable, non-refundable energy of our actual days in this wanting and fearing and raging and worrying, pulling at things that will not move, bracing against things that have already arrived, defending positions that were lost before we noticed we were defending them. This is not weakness, this is not failure. This is what it looks like to be a human being who has not yet learned, who has not yet been taught the single most liberating distinction in the history of philosophy. Epictetus called it the dichotomy of control. His word for it was prohairesis, the faculty of choice, the inner citadel, the one thing, the only thing that belongs to you completely and cannot be taken. And he knew this not as a theory. He knew it because someone had tried to take everything else and failed.
Epictetus was born around 50 AD in Hierapolis, in what is now Turkey, into slavery. His very name is not a name in the traditional sense. In Greek, Epiktetos means simply acquired, purchased, property. He was brought to Rome as a slave, assigned to serve Epaphroditus, who was himself a freed slave and who had risen to become the personal secretary of Emperor Nero, a man of considerable power who used some portion of that power to make his slave's life difficult. The broken leg story may be legend, but it is the kind of legend that survives because it captures something true about the man, about his philosophy, and about the particular astonishing quality of inner freedom he had developed under conditions specifically designed to destroy it. Because here is what is extraordinary about Epictetus. He was not free when he developed his philosophy. He was not writing from the comfort of a Roman villa or the security of a pension. He was working it out, living it out, in the middle of the circumstances that made it most necessary. The philosophy was not the result of his freedom. His freedom was the result of the philosophy. He was eventually freed, probably after Nero's death when Epaphroditus fell from power. He set up a small school in Nicopolis in northwestern Greece. He taught with a directness, a ferocity, and a refusal of philosophical decoration that became legendary. His student Arian took notes. Those notes became the Discourses, 4 books of Epictetus teaching, arguing, prodding, occasionally mocking his students into understanding. And a shorter summary, the Enchiridion, or handbook, that Marcus Aurelius carried with him on military campaigns, and that has been carried in spirit by every serious student of Stoicism ever since. The handbook opens with the most important sentence in Stoic philosophy. Perhaps, I would argue, the most important sentence in the history of practical philosophy. Quote, "Some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever are our own actions. Things not in our control are body, reputation, command, and, in one word, whatever are not our own actions." End quote. Read that again slowly, because each word is doing work. Things in our control, opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion, our own actions, the choices we make with the faculty of reason, the judgments we form about what is good or bad, the direction we point our attention and our effort. Things not in our control, body, reputation, command, health, what other people think of us, whether we are promoted or passed over, whether the diagnosis is good or bad, whether the market rises or falls, whether the person we love loves us back. Notice how much of what we spend our lives managing, protecting, pursuing, and dreading falls on the wrong side of that line. Epictetus is not asking you to stop caring about those things. He is asking you to stop treating them as if your well-being depends on them. Because the moment your peace of mind is conditional on something outside your control, you have handed the keys to your inner life to the world. And the world is not a reliable custodian. I want to be precise here, because the dichotomy of control is the most misunderstood idea in Stoic philosophy, and the misunderstanding usually goes in one of two directions. The first misunderstanding is that Epictetus is asking us to become passive, to stop trying to influence the world, to accept whatever happens with a kind of shrugging indifference. He is asking the opposite. When you stop spending energy on what you cannot control, you have an extraordinary amount of energy available for what you can. The Stoics were not passive people. They were soldiers, statesmen, emperors, activists. Marcus Aurelius spent 20 years on military campaigns. Epictetus ran a school for decades and shaped the minds of a generation. The dichotomy of control is not about doing less. It is about doing what you do with your full, undivided, unfrightened attention, because you are no longer hemorrhaging energy into the vast territories of what was never yours to manage. The second misunderstanding is that Epictetus is asking us not to feel, to become emotionally flat, to watch our loved ones suffer or our dreams collapse and feel nothing, because feeling is a sign of attachment to what is outside our control. Again, the opposite. Epictetus wept. He loved his students. He cared about the world with a ferocity that his teaching makes clear on every page. What he was not doing, what he trained himself through years of practice not to do, was to allow his emotional state to be determined by circumstances he could not influence. There is a difference, a crucial, life-changing difference between feeling grief and being destroyed by grief, between caring about an outcome and making your sense of self conditional on achieving it, between loving someone and making your inner peace hostage to their choices. Epictetus understood that difference from the inside because he had lived it, because someone had tried to take everything from him and had discovered that there was one thing they could not reach.
There is a teaching of Epictetus that I want to stay with, because it is the one that most directly addresses the specific shape of suffering that visits people in midlife. He called it the discipline of desire. Most of us, by the time we are in our 40s and 50s, have assembled an elaborate structure of desires, things we want that we do not yet have, things we have that we are afraid of losing, and underneath both of those, a running comparison between the life we are living and the life we had expected to be living by now. The career that was supposed to be further along, the relationship that was supposed to feel different, the version of ourselves that was supposed to have arrived, calmer, more certain, more clearly in command of the life we were building, that keeps not quite materializing. And this gap between desire and reality is, Epictetus says, the precise location of all unnecessary suffering. Not the gap between what you have and what you want, the gap between what you have and what you think you should have, what the world owes you, what the contract of a well-lived life was supposed to deliver. Because there is no such contract, there never was, and the sooner, the more honestly you release it, the sooner the energy spent maintaining it becomes available for what is actually here. Epictetus would say, with the directness of a man who had never had the luxury of pretending, that the suffering is not in the circumstances, it is in the story you are telling about what the circumstances mean about you, about the world, about whether life is fair. Change the story, not by pretending the circumstances are different, by examining whether the meaning you have attached to them is actually necessarily, inevitably true. Here is what Epictetus asks of you, practically, today. First, draw the line. Take a single sheet of paper, draw a line down the center. On the left, everything currently consuming your energy and attention that is, by Epictetus's definition, outside your control. The economy, other people's behavior, your health outcomes, your reputation, what your children decide, what your employer decides, what time has already done. On the right, what is actually yours, your response, your judgment, your effort, your honesty, the quality of attention you bring to this day. Look at both sides. Notice the ratio. Notice how much of your inner life is being spent on the left side of that line, and how little is being invested in the only territory that was ever genuinely yours to cultivate. Second, practice the stoic pause. When something happens that triggers a strong reaction, anger, anxiety, hurt, fear, before acting on it, insert a pause, a breath, a single question. Is this in my control or not? If it is, act, fully, deliberately, with everything you have. If it is not, ask what your response to it will be. Because your response is always yours, always, under every circumstance Epictetus ever encountered or imagined. This pause, practiced daily in the small provocations before the large ones, is the foundational discipline of everything Epictetus taught. It is the gap between stimulus and response in which the whole of your freedom lives. Third, identify your inner citadel. Epictetus used this phrase, the inner citadel, to describe the core of the self that cannot be reached by external force, the values, the commitments, the quality of character that remain yours regardless of what the world does to your circumstances. Ask yourself, honestly, without performance, what is in my inner citadel right now? What do I know about myself that circumstance cannot alter? What would remain true about me if everything external were stripped away? Write it down, not as aspiration, as inventory, what is actually there, what has survived everything that has already happened. Because what Epictetus discovered in chains, what he demonstrated in the most extreme conditions available to a human life, is that there is always something there. Always. The citadel is never entirely empty. Fourth, practice voluntary discomfort.
This is perhaps the most surprising practice in the Stoic tradition, and the one most directly rooted in Epictetus's own experience. He regularly recommended that his students voluntarily encounter the things they feared losing. Sleep on a hard floor occasionally, skip a meal, go without something you consider necessary, and discover that you can. Not as punishment, as proof. Proof that your well-being does not depend on the things you have been treating as essential, that the comfort, the convenience, the status, held more loosely, they cannot hold you. Epictetus had this knowledge given to him by force. He is offering you the chance to acquire it by choice. And choice, as he spent his entire life demonstrating, is the only freedom that was ever real.
I want to close with the image of Epictetus in his school in Nicopolis. He is old now. The leg, broken or not, has given him a limp he has carried for decades. He lives simply, a small house, a lamp, a mat, a door that will not properly lock. He has written with characteristic dry humor that he has no fear of robbery because there is nothing worth taking. His students come from across the Roman world, wealthy young men, the sons of senators and equestrians, who have traveled great distances to sit in a small room and be taught by a former slave who owns almost nothing. And what he tells them, day after day, with the patience and the ferocity and the occasional sharp edge of a man who has earned every word he says, is this: you are not your circumstances. You are not your reputation. You are not your body, your wealth, your titles, or the opinion of people who do not know what you are made of. You are your choices, your judgments, your willingness to look clearly at what is in your control and give it everything, while releasing, with open hands and without grief, everything that was never yours to hold. That is freedom. Not the freedom that requires particular circumstances to exist. The freedom that exists inside any circumstances. The freedom that a slave demonstrated to an empire. The freedom that is available to you right now, in this moment, in the life you are actually living, if you are willing to claim it. Here is the question I want to leave you with today. Think of the thing that is most disturbing your peace right now, the worry, the resentment, the fear, the grief that is taking up the most interior space. Is it in your control or not? And if it is not, what would it feel like to set it down, not forever, not with false certainty that it does not matter, just for today, just for this hour? Leave that in the comments, because that answer, your honest, specific, Epictetus-tested answer, is the beginning of the only freedom that no one can ever take from you. I'll see you in the next one.